Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Sharon Fenoglio, Associate Vice Chancellor for Advancement, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us this morning for this, our first Legacy Council lecture presentation of the year, Remaining Relevant in 2021. First, if you need technical support, we have someone on standby to help. The best way is to reach out through email. If you need help, please email executiveevents@umsl.edu for assistance. Again, that's executiveevents@umsl.edu. Following the presentation today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to move into breakout rooms based on two areas of interest. You'll be prompted on your screen to join a breakout room. From there, you can choose the track that best suits your situation or interest. Finally, I wanted to let you know that this presentation is being recorded. A link will be sent in a follow-up email to all registrants, and it will be housed on the UMSL website for future reference. As ever, our goal of this series is to share engaging and informative content from UMSL alumni, faculty, and staff who are experts in their respective fields. Today's event is no different. Today's lecture focuses on cultivating the entrepreneurial spirit and harnessing those skills to great impact. With us today, we have two UMSL alumni who will present on why the entrepreneur mindset is not just for startups, and who are here to help you dive deeper into remaining relevant as the entrepreneur or intrapreneur. But first, it's my pleasure to welcome UMSL's Chancellor, Kristen Sobolik, who will introduce our presenters and speak a little more on the connection between UMSL and the entrepreneur experience. Chancellor?
Thank you, Sharon, and hello, everyone, and good morning. The topic for this morning is how to remain relevant. Coming off of a year that saw a pandemic completely shift our worldview, a discussion about the skills and entrepreneur mindset could not be more, relevant. To guide you through this important discussion, I am proud to introduce two University of Missouri St. Louis alumni. Laura Burkemper is a business owner, startup investor, and adjunct professor who serves as a partner and CEO of CARTEL. She is a leader in corporate strategy and innovation, having worked for three of the world's largest startups turned grown-ups, including Express Scripts, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola. She earned her business degree from the University of Missouri St. Louis and MBA in International Business from St. Louis University. Dan Lauer is creator of the Water Babies doll, which has sold over 25 million dolls. In 2021, his company is debuting a new initiative, Water Babies Loves Clean Water, with a pledge to build 250 wells across the world. Dan earned his BSBA from the University of Missouri St. Louis and has been recognized as a distinguished alumni. Dan Lauer is also the founding executive director of UMSL Accelerator, the entrepreneurship initiative at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Under his guidance, UMSL Accelerator has led efforts to develop a BSBA with emphasis in entrepreneurship, founded mentor programs, clubs, and clinics, and has differentiated UMSL by pioneering university-led accelerators, including the Ameren Accelerator and the University of Missouri system-wide EQ Student Accelerator. We are incredibly proud of the Accelerate initiative. It is yet another example of the University of Missouri St. Louis leading through innovative programming. Now, we are UMSL proud to have launched the first ever university-led Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Accelerator. I'm pleased to introduce this short video to illustrate the impact programs like this can have on our community.
St. Louis has an opportunity to show the rest of the country what it truly means to amplify diverse founders tangible, equitable, direct investments that will benefit the community the most.
Apply to be a part of the very first cohort of the UMSL Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Accelerator. Apply for $50,000 in equity-free funding for your startup or early-stage business.
We want to create something with undeniable impact, a program that empowers not only through mentorship and guidance, but also, most importantly, equity. Equity for this region. St. Louis can really stand up. And with our sponsors, we can demonstrate that investing in diverse founders is good for the economy, good for the region.
$50,000 that can take your business from scalable to scaling, and a network of mentors and connectors. We will leverage the strengths of the university and Business Accelerator to help propel you forward.
Equity, funding diverse founders is a game changer.
The power of university-led accelerators is that we leverage paid student interns, we amplify with faculty, and generate connections with alums. You know, for this accelerator, we received over 430 applications demonstrating this unmet need. And working with our ecosystem partners, we narrowed the field down to 16. And from that, we had a Shark Tank to choose the 6 winning founders. We're now in the middle of that best-in-class accelerator program, and if anyone has an interest in learning more about this cohort or supporting our goal of being a first-choice university for entrepreneurial-minded students, please follow with me today or any day, and you'll have our contact information. So let's get started with Laura.
So today, as Chancellor Sobolik said, we are talking about avoiding obsolescence and remaining relevant in 2021. So if we said that another way, that's about feeding that entrepreneurial mindset, right? And so today's theme is exactly that. So whether you're an entrepreneur or a corporate innovator or an intrapreneur, or you're on the investment side of that, what you're going to hear today are things that no matter how you look at it, it's all the same content, but it's coming at you from a different angle. So what we're going to do is divide it into 3 sections. The first section is really going to talk about how do you look for opportunities? How do you combat competitive threats? Where can you find these gaps in the market, right? And make hay while the sun shines. The second piece is, how do you create that culture of innovation and create that entrepreneurial mindset within your organization, no matter how big or how small? And then the third section is the 12 steps necessary to get your idea from concept to a go or a no-go, whichever the case may be. But it's those steps of looking at the feasibility of your idea and then pitching that idea to get others on board with you. So those are the 3 sections. And so why is it important to feed that entrepreneurial mindset? Well, as we know, obsolescence is the predator that we fight every day, right? So in order to remain relevant, what are those things that are necessary to avoid obsolescence? At one time, what you see on the screen here, this Viewmaster was really, really cool. But as we know today, there's a whole different type of Viewmaster, more of an Oculus or virtual reality. So the point being is, in order to remain relevant, it's so important because without it, there's no revenue, there's no growth, because there is no interest in your product. So really, coming from a brand background, what this really means is, how do you look at your target audience? What are they into today? What were they into in the past? And what does the future look like? So sometimes that's a brand refresh. We look at that in terms of, we call it brand as an evolution, not a revolution. So it's keeping current, keeping relevant. And so if we go to the next slide, what we're going to talk about is unbundling 4 different companies. So what does that term mean? So it's really looking at these different companies and all the suite of services they offer, and who might be chipping away at those services and unbundling them and causing some lost revenues, some deteriorating year-over-year competitive comp growth. So if we unbundle FedEx, this is what that would look like. So CB Insights does a great job of unbundling. So if I take FedEx as an example, there are 4 sections. So FedEx Ground, which you see here, FedEx Freight, which is more that palletized version, and then FedEx Custom Critical, which could be anything from getting something overnight from say a heart transplant, anything that might be custom critical. And then the 4th bucket is FedEx's freight forwarding. And so if we just look at their suite of services, and if you think about your own organization, your own company, what are the services that you offer? And so going back to the first one, the packaging envelope and FedEx freight, that's what we kind of know every day. We go out and we give our package to the FedEx or take it to the box and drop it off. But who is FedEx's competition? So what might come to mind, maybe UPS or DHL. But when you see this slide, you start to see all these small companies that you may or may not have heard of start to unbundle FedEx or chip away at their core competencies. For instance, in this section, there's Roadie, there's ShipHawk, there's Ship, there's Doorman. You may or may not have heard of them until maybe they're the size of them or some money gets behind them. You know, they're freight shipments, there's Convoy, there's Keychain. So all these companies are coming at FedEx and trying to unbundle or steal market share. And if FedEx only looks at UPS, DHL, or the Postal Service, then they're missing a huge piece of the audience. So if we take that same example and take it one step further, let's talk about unbundling Petsmart. So if we look at Petsmart's suite of services, they have the grooming salon, the pet hotel, dog training, their Banfield veterinary clinic, and then they have the main part of the store, which has the toys and the food for your pet. So if you think about Petsmart's competition, you might think of Petco or your local pet store. But all of a sudden, you start to hear of, say, Chewy.com or Rover.com that's taking away market share from the pet hotel or Doggy Vacay or 1-800-PET-MEDS. And so when you think about the physical structure of a PetSmart, and if you literally took out that center section where the Chewy.com is playing around the toys, the food, you're now removing a whole section of a store. Your footprint becomes too large, your comp sales decline, and all of a sudden, you know, the business model starts to deteriorate. So what can you do to find out who are these companies that what may be known today as ankle biters until they become Rover.com or Chewy.com? So if I look at that same thing and take it to another example, let's unbundle hospitality. So all of us have traveled to different cities, and in this case, Starwood is at the center. So who do we think of Starwood's competition? Maybe it's Marriott, maybe it's Hyatt, maybe it's Hilton. So those are the key competitors, but also if you're at a convention, say in New York, and you don't want to stay at the Starwood where the convention's being held, you can choose any alternative lodging, say Airbnb. Now, you may not have heard of some of these other ones, but that's just because they don't have either the size or the dollars, the connections behind them. But these are the up and coming ones that a Starwood, a Marriott, a Hilton does need to consider. So when you start to think about, well, I'm going to book my hotel, I no longer have to just call Starwood. I can call a hotel booking service, or I can go online to Expedia, to Priceline, to hotels.com. So now all of a sudden, all those employees that were once employees of Starwood at that call center are no longer relevant because they're not needed. And the same thing when you start to think about hosting a meeting at the Starwood Hotel. Perhaps it's very expensive to have a meeting room. And then when you add on the snacks and the drinks, and how expensive does that become? So maybe you're only using Starwood for your lodging, or maybe you're only using it for the event. But what are these other things that are chipping away at their business? You know, when the owner of Starwood, if you will, wakes up and says, wow, our sales are down this year, what's chipping away? Seems like Marriott's down and so are the others. You start to look beyond the immediate, and you start to see things like this. And so the fourth example, we're going to unbundle Chase Bank. But for those of you in the room that are startups, when you're looking at unbundling or going after, you know, an opportunity, you see a gap in the marketplace, the grown-up, if you will, or the corporation's looking at it from the opposite lens. So they're looking at, how do we fight off that competitive threat? So let's use the reverse example, and let's unbundle Chase Bank through Amazon instead of through a startup. So grown-up companies are also doing this. So as a for instance, you can see all the ways in which Amazon is unbundling Chase Bank. For instance, Amazon has aggressively invested in payments infrastructures and services over the past few years. The reason why is because they're trying to get the most cash efficient and frictionless method to allow customers as their key priority. So when you look at, for instance, the checking accounts, Amazon has cash. When you look at credit cards, Amazon has their credit card, or they offer you a Prime Visa that gets you additional discounts. So you can start to see how, whether you're a startup or you're a grown-up company, you're chipping away at these opportunities to gain market share. And unless you're looking at these competitive threats in this way, you're missing a big section of those that can certainly disrupt or in essence make you irrelevant. And so the point being is, you know, some of these small companies, you think, well, they're so small, they're not even on my radar, they don't matter. Well, they start to matter when companies like Kleiner Perkins, which is a venture capital firm, gets behind them. So what you see in front of you is really a screen grab of their companies that they've invested in from their website. And so most of us have heard of Square or Google or Waze or Amazon.com or Twitter. Maybe we've heard of Lending Club, maybe Flexus Bioscience, or maybe not. So the point being is, when you start to put you know, capital behind these companies, the startups become the grown-ups themselves. In the same example, with another venture capital firm called Sequoia. So Sequoia is invested in these and many more, but you might have heard of YouTube or Zappos for shoes or Yahoo or WhatsApp. But what is Vector? What is Trulia? What is Thousand Eyes? Perhaps today we don't know, but it might be in 3 to 5 years, 7 years, that we start to know, once they build the team, the infrastructure, and have the dollars behind it. When I start to look at you know, the continuum of money, just as an example, as an aside, when you're a startup, you're looking at friends, family, and founders investing in you. And then as you move up that continuum of money, that's where angel investment comes in. So that might be at the $25,000 level. And kind of as their name suggests, they fell from heaven. These angels want to invest in you. And then as you go up one more step in the food chain, up to the venture capital level, that's usually around the 3 million mark. And then you hit the IPO, or initial public offering. And then on the other side of the fence is stocks, bonds, mutual funds. So on that continuum of money, as you progress through that, think of an example could be Facebook stock. So Facebook started out in a college, and then angel investment, then venture capital. It became an initial public offering, and now today we can buy that stock. So it's as simple and as difficult as that. But when you get that funding behind, these startups become grown-ups. And that's why making sure you're looking at the opportunity or the gaps in your business and combating that competitive threat so that you remain relevant. And so we're going to talk about this next section about bridging that gap. So whether you're on the startup side or the corporate innovator side, how do you look at your business and make sure you have the internal infrastructure built as well? So let's redefine entrepreneurship. So instead of thinking at it as the solopreneur or the person starting out from scratch, we have to think about it in this way. Not only is entrepreneurship for those starting new businesses, but also for those who want to help their existing company become market leaders. And what we're going to do next is share a video with you, a 30-second commercial from Cadillac, and we'll just start it off with saying, "Yep, it all started in a garage."
The Wright brothers started in a garage. Amazon started in a garage. Hewlett-Packard and Disney both started in garages. Mattel started in a garage. The Ramones started in a garage. My point? You never know what kind of greatness can come out of an American garage. Introducing the 2014 Motor Trend Car of the Year, the all-new Cadillac CTS. Ain't garages great?
So the point being was not to show you a 2014 television commercial for Cadillac, but instead to share with you that it's easy to look at the world's largest companies and think, I could never start something like that. But the point here is really this. They didn't all start out by creating the Amazon as we know it, the Apple or the Google that we know today. They started out by creating an online bookstore, a computer, and a search algorithm. So it's not about where you start out, but rather about where you end up. And so the concept is this. For those who stand still, they fall behind. So it's important for people and all companies to start cultivating that innovation mindset via entrepreneurial thinking. So it's that entrepreneurial mindset that feeds the relevance. And so as an adjunct professor, one of the things that I had in class happen was somebody was taking the course on how to get from concept to a go. So the feasibility of an idea. And they said, I'm not creative, I'm in accounting. And I'm not innovative. And I said, have you ever invented a process? Have you ever improved a process? Have you ever made, something like that? It doesn't have to always be creating a widget, a product, a service. It can be just an improvement. So that entrepreneurial thinking will keep you moving forward and feeding that relevance. And so every company needs a sustainable, repeatable, profitable, and scalable process for turning ideas from thought into action. So anytime you hear you might overhear somebody say, hey, I wish I had that's the time where your ears should perk up. That's that entrepreneurial thinking should kick in, because that could be the next golden ticket. So when you start to hear people say that, what you're going to learn today is the steps necessary to get that idea from concept to creation. And so when we look at the interworkings of an organization and how to create a more innovative and entrepreneurially minded organization, we have to have alignment. And so alignment around the mission, around the vision, around the value proposition and values of that organization. And the reason that's important is, at CARTEL, we like to say the clearer the mission, the higher the margin. When people understand who you are, what you do, and why they should come to you and what they can buy from you, the revenue increases from there. So the other part of that is your employees. So having that alignment around here's the purpose of our organization and here's how your role funnels into that purpose really creates everybody rowing in the same direction, pointing towards that North Star of your organization. And if we look at the leadership of organizations, so some create a more risk tolerant organization than others. So why is this important? Well, if you don't create that culture of being able to try different things, sometimes those end in failure, sometimes those end in success. But if you don't have that culture, then nobody's going to try because they're afraid of it. So when you start to look at risk, reward, and return on investment, it's also how do you measure those things. So we're going to talk about metrics in a moment, but when you have an employee and they're responsible for innovation, well, how are you measuring them? Sometimes those innovations are 100 things that we're not going to do to find the one that we will. So it's important to have the right structure in place to create an entrepreneurial minded organization. And so this leads me to this concept of accelerating failure. So it sounds counterintuitive, but really it's about failing forward. And failing forward allows you to save time and money, right? So the sooner you get to it's a go or it's a no-go, that's going to save you time and money so you can move on to the next thing. And the way you do that is through what's called sprints or rapid prototyping or getting to a minimal viable product, an MVP. And really what that is, it's kind of like A/B testing. Does this work better or does that work better? So it might be more easily said as act, learn, build on that, and then repeat. And so these concepts of doing sprints and figuring out what exactly does the customer want or the target audience, what will work in more of a lab setting. So the act, learn, build, repeat will help you to accelerate failure, or in other words, accelerate success. Another key thing that's important to have in an organization is metrics, right? So the concept here is you only manage what you measure. So without metrics, how will you know when you've succeeded? And so again, that comes back to creating that organization. If you've got a team of people that you say, yeah, please go ahead and bring us all your best innovative ideas. But corporations are built around quarterly earnings, and sometimes those things don't lend itself well to innovation because innovation doesn't fit neatly into a quarter or into a box, right? And so what are those things that you're going to look at within your organization to measure? Is it the number of projects? Is it how many people in the target audience? Is there a 78% or 85% hurdle rate? What is it that you're looking for? And also, when it comes to employees, if this year nothing succeeded, is that a failure? Should that employee not get the bonus? Should that employee not get a positive review? Looking at innovation in that way is looking at it in a bubble because it, again, doesn't fit neatly into a box. So before you set out on creating a culture of innovation, it's important to make sure you understand what you're measuring, because again, you only manage what you measure. And another section is about successful projects. So finding your champion within your organization. Sometimes we're not all as fortunate to find the boss that supports innovation because they're busy supporting the day-to-day. But if you have that entrepreneurial mind, you can help grow that and cultivate that within your organization. So finding that champion at that higher level that believes in what you're doing is really key to getting you over a few hurdles. And the next piece is around the deliverables, the resources and the target date. So when you start to look at resources like time, money, people, what are the resources that you're assigned? What are the deliverable dates? What is the target date that this is due? And so when you start to look at a successful project, seems like we always have that opportunity when the boss comes in and says, hey, we've got to move that target date up by 2 weeks. And so the question becomes, well, what other time, money, or people are we putting towards getting to that goal sooner, or moving those chess pieces so that you do end up with a successful project? The goal is not just to have an outcome, but to have a successful project outcome. And so as part of that team goes, the LMD formula becomes really key. And so leaders, so in order to have a successful team, you need a leader, a manager, and a doer. And so this isn't just about hierarchy. This can be around your peer groups. And the key thing is, leaders are able to share with you that vision and help you with what to do and craft out that roadmap. The managers help to understand how to do it and what teams need to be in place. And the doers get the work done. And it's important to have all those functions, because if you had all leaders, the task at hand wouldn't get done. And if you had all doers, you might get a lot done, but it might not be the right things. So making sure you have a well-rounded team of leaders, managers, doers becomes really critical to a successful project as well. And so the recipe for success is a good idea, well executed. And so when you start to look at, okay, if you're the entrepreneur on this call today, you think about your idea, or you're a corporate innovator and you've got one as well. You don't have to be on the innovation team to make it successful. What you just have to do is have a good idea that's well executed. And so what we're going to walk through next is the third section, which is really about the steps necessary to get your idea from concept to a go. And so when we start to look at those key steps, what you're really doing is looking at the feasibility of an idea. So if we use the TV show Shark Tank as an example, that's a nice 10-minute segment for each entrepreneur. It fits neatly into a box. But before that person gets to that podium or that starting gate, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So that's the steps we're going to outline today. And when we look at these steps, they're really about the feasibility of the idea. And then it culminates in the pitch deck, but it's all the same concepts. So again, if you're the entrepreneur or the intrapreneur, or you're the investor, you're either presenting the information, or you should be asking for the information if you're not getting it out of the pitch. And so let's talk about the first step. So creating that feasibility analysis that leads to the perfect pitch starts with a verbal hook, right? So like any good presentation, you want to engage your audience and get them to say to you, tell me more. And so when you create a presentation around your idea, here's a couple examples. So a hook can be your credentials. It can be a quick 10-second intro, or it can be something like this. I was in Silicon Valley at NASA's research park, and there was an astrophysicist there. And here's what he said. He said, hi, my name is Mike. I'm an astrophysicist. 300 years ago, we looked down into a microscope to find life. What I'm hoping to do is build a telescope that we can look up into the sky and find existential life. Would you come with me on this journey? So what he did is he established credibility through his background as an astrophysicist. And then he described exactly a very visual way of hooking people. And now if I go to the student end, I had a student say, hi, my name is Ben. Has anybody ever had a hard time waking up in the morning? Raise your hand. Has anybody ever had a hard time falling asleep at night? Raise your hand. Well, my name's Ben, and I'm the inventor of the AM PM toothpaste. The PM toothpaste, we put melatonin. The AM toothpaste, we put caffeine. Would anybody like to come take this journey? So these verbal hooks allow you to quickly, almost like an elevator pitch, get into the presentation itself. And then once you do, you're actually articulating the problem you're there to solve. So your second slide is really about the reason why your target is currently frustrated with the current offerings. And so what is it? Is it when you're looking at it from an investor or corporate investment standpoint, is the problem big enough for me to get out of bed? Is it big enough for me to care? Said differently, when companies like Kleiner Perkins or like Sequoia, they see so much deal flow that it has to be something sizable, right? So figuring out if your problem is big enough for people to care about, or is there just 5 people that want it? So that's why the problem becomes a really key piece of building the perfect pitch. And so when we look at the third piece, it's the solution to that. So what is your solution to that problem? And why does it do it better than anybody else? And this is a chance to shine. This is This is where you can be sharing your unique value proposition, all the reasons why you're better and different in the marketplace. As you start to research your idea, one of the key things is thinking about it in this way. It's when you see competition, that's a good thing. It means there's a market for it. But what you need to do is carve out your niche competitively so that you're different and more unique. You could be more expensive or less expensive. You could be higher quality or a cheaper brand, or you could have more functionality. So lots of different benefits. So highlight those in your solution. And so, you know, if I think about some more complex types of things like software as a service, or you know, a platform that you might have developed, we as entrepreneurs like to take the stance of we just love to talk about our idea. And so sometimes we just have to simplify. So how does it work in 3 easy steps? Instead of telling us at this point in time, you know, how to build the watch, it's just telling us what time it is, right? There's plenty of time in the Q&A, because if you've got about a 10-minute pitch, then you want to get these key points out and save the details for the subject matter experts that might be asking about those details. And so if we move to the 5th step of building the perfect pitch, it's really around your business model. So how is it that you make money, right? So that's the key thing. If you're selling a product or a service, what is your per unit? What is your per hour? How do you make money? And a lot of times what we see as entrepreneurs or corporate innovators have a whole plethora of things that are, I'll call it add-ons to that. But I like to look at it in more of a crawl, walk, run scenario. So how do you stand up your business first? So here's the widget we're offering today. Here's the service we're offering. But we also see that it applies to these industries, or that we can add on to that service. So one of the nice ways of visually depicting that is saying, here's how we make money with the first, but we also see lots of revenue streams in our future. We're going to gray those out and stay focused on the first one until we make enough that we can grow the other revenue streams of our business model. What that does is it tells the audience that you're focused, but there's a lot of runway ahead. And so if we go to the 6th piece of the perfect pitch, it's all around the market opportunity, right? So I had mentioned, you know, is it a big enough idea for me to care about? So who has this problem? What is the total addressable market out there? And what that might be the world, right? But you probably don't have a marketing budget to reach the world. So let's bring it a little bit closer to home. So let's look at the obtainable market. So if you're a restaurant, you certainly could feed the world, but you don't have those types of deep pockets. So you could feed the US, or you could feed St. Louis or a section of St. Louis. So how do you look at the more crawl, walk, run scenario for your market opportunity that would help you to dominate that market? And again, looking at the competition. So there's a really easy way for you to really shine in your presentation. So when you think about your service or product, and you build it in a grid format, so down the left-hand side are all the benefits of why your product or service is fantastic, all the benefits. So you'll have a check mark. Then across the top is your company, competitor A, competitor B, competitor C. And what that does is allows you to then have all your checks and then check different boxes that they have the same or similar benefits. What it does is it creates a nice visual that at a glance you can see why you're clearly better and where the gaps are with the competition. So it's a really nice way to get your point across visually and really shine at that moment. And then as you build out your presentation, what is the way you're going to go to market? So helping the investor or the corporate innovator, how do you go to market? Is that, you know, through Salesforce? Is it through a distributor of a product? So they take more of your revenue, but they might get you to market faster. Or are you using your website? Or are you using Amazon.com to push out your product? Or are you pushing it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? What is the roadmap or the go-to-market strategy? And when we look at adding traction, this is really the idea around, sales are the best traction, right? That's proof of concept. But let's say you're brand new and you don't have sales yet. So a purchase order or intent to buy, or even if you're pre all of that, market research will do wonders. So if you can prove that there's somebody out in the marketplace that really wants this product, and here's all the research that proves it, you're getting your potential investor one step closer to realizing that this is the investment for them. Additionally, if you have any intellectual property working with your attorney, that just makes it all the more investable. And so then that takes us to the financial piece. So this is really just a best estimate of how much money you will make in the next 3 to 5 years. Depending on the pitch, you might have projections 3 years out. Anything after that, it is a bit of a guess, if you will, an educated guess. But doing those projections it usually looks like a hockey stick. You start out slow and all of a sudden you're making great revenue later on. But having that estimate and really showcasing to the audience that the problem you have is real, that the competitive threat that you're solving, you've carved out a niche that's different than them, that your marketing dollars that you're spending are going to get you to the sales to get you these financials. What you're really doing is pulling a thread through your entire presentation to say why you're investable. And that leads to the last bit of the slides here, but it's around the team. So when you start to look at any investable idea, one of the key components is the team. And why is that, right? So the team, you might list out your credentials, the education, the job experience, the expertise, showcasing how your team is best suited to turn this idea into a scalable, profitable business. The team piece is really critical because investors invest in people, right? They also invest in ideas, but people first, because do I think that person can get that idea to this milestone and to the next milestone? And as a company grows, sometimes you have to put the right people in the right seats on the bus, right? So you have to shift people around. But having a solid team, an investable team, is one of the #1 criteria for people investing in companies. And so that funding, so figuring out a lot of times with an accountant, what funding is necessary. So how much money is needed to be invested to get you from point A to B, and what will you do with that? So this helps you to think about, if I need, $500,000, if I need $1 million, or if I need $5 million, what exactly will those dollars be used for? And does that make sense? And is it in alignment with what I've just heard? So that investment piece starts to look at, well, out of that $1 million, 20% are going to sales and marketing. We need to hire a salesperson. Our go-to-market strategy is this. And then the other part is maybe software development. 40% goes to software, and the remaining 20% is operations. So what you've just done is outlined exactly what those dollars are going to do to get you to that next milestone. And so the last slide is the summary slide. So instead of using a close that just says, thank you for your time, what I'd recommend is really a close that summarizes why your idea is the best, right? So, this is a huge marketplace of X million people. We're investable, we're the best in class. So start to list the highlights of why you're the most investable business in your space. And then leave that up, because invariably when you go to the Q&A, people's eyes always divert back to either you or the slide. And so why not leave up why you're the greatest and what are your summary highlights? And as you go into that Q&A section, one of the most interesting things is how you address that Q&A. So what I would also do is build out an appendix of things like customer testimonials, a summary of your technology stack. Maybe it's a more detailed financial, some press mentions. And a lot of times investors will ask, well, what's the exit strategy? Meaning, who would buy this company from us? Should we want to sell it? And so if you have done your homework and just can pop to the different slides in the appendix, it just shows you've done your research. It shows that you know your stuff. And it's all the things that are extraneous to the presentation, because all the items, call it 1 through 13, those are the components of a standard pitch globally. This isn't my version of it. This is what we see when I'm a part of Stadia Ventures. I'm a part of the diversity inclusion here. These are the things we look at when we're looking at creating an investable pitch. And so kind of in summary, you may have identified a gap in the market, but these are the steps to help you to determine if there is a market in that gap, right? And so as we look towards, what we learned today, let's talk about avoiding obsolescence and staying relevant in order to stay in the game, right? And so we've also learned about getting aligned to create more of a foster a culture of innovation in your organization. We looked at the components to develop a perfect pitch, whether you're an entrepreneur or intrapreneur, or if you're an investor, does all these things make sense? Do they all add up to an investable business? And then when we look at bridging that gap between startup and grown up, it's like, how do I take my small company to a greater level? Like I said, in my bio, I've worked for Express Scripts. In 1986, they started out with 5 employees. They now have been bought by Cigna and have over 100,000. Coca-Cola started out selling 8 or 9 soft drinks in the 1800s. McDonald's started, Ray Kroc sold 8 multi-mixer shake machines. So the key point is everybody started at the beginning. It's not where you start, it's where you end up. And so it's really important to avoiding obsolescence and remaining relevant by developing that entrepreneurial mindset. Otherwise, as the Pac-Man says, otherwise it's game over. And so we want to remain relevant. So that's the presentation for today. What we're going to do is jump out into breakout groups. And whether you're a corporate innovator or you're the entrepreneur, please join us for the next session to answer any questions that you might have specifically around your idea or your organization. Thank you.
Congratulations for being in this room. I think what Laura delivered was kind of the best in class, state of the art processes that go around entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. This is what we teach in class. This is what we share in clubs. This is what we demand of our accelerators and in our entrepreneurs that we touch. And it's a relatively new science in terms of the processes around it. The hope today, though, isn't that you just sit and listen to this presentation. You've joined this room, you've joined this breakout room because you might have an idea. You might have a product or a service, or you might have a dream to start your own thing. And what we'd like to do is create a safe place to discuss it, a safe way to follow up afterwards. So for me, there's 2 things I want to address in this group. One is we talk a lot about mindset. So I'm going to share a screen too. Mindset is a dubious thing because everyone says entrepreneur mindset. What does that mean? Does it mean resilient? Does it mean creative problem solver? What are the 18? Everyone's trying to figure out the 8 or 12 or 6 different concepts that make a successful entrepreneur. We have 3 at UMSL. Oh, and it mirrors some of the things Laura said. This is what's going to be required of you to take your idea that you have this morning and in 3 years have it mean something. One is that learn fast culture free from fear. The first thing, the most important thing that stops most of us is being afraid. being afraid of being ridiculed, being afraid of losing money, being afraid of being wrong. And so adopting the mindset that I don't care. And for example, I know Pat Goodell's on the call here. He was an early investor in water babies. You know, it's fun to talk about 30 years later, but my first prototypes were balloons and condoms tied together. Imagine how crude that has to be. So the fear, breaking through the fear of prototyping and drawing and early stage. So that free from fear part, the learn fast culture is, though, what we want to do this morning for each of you is de-risk the project. I've seen way too many people come to me and say, wow, I've got a second mortgage on my house. I'm about ready to get divorced. I've got these 10,000 gadgets in my basement and no one wants them. And I'm like, well, man, I wish you would have gone to Walgreens and seen a product just like yours already on the market. And that's what happened to me too. Water babies was not my first thing. I had a thing called cast savers. Break your arm or leg, you want to take a shower or bath, and you have this baggy kind of tourniquet thing. So in my customer discovery, I walked in the Walgreens and there was a product called Shower Safe, identical to what I wanted. So I stopped. And so one of the things this morning, what we want to hope for you is take it far enough, tease it far out with these processes and get to that go, no go. The second part of an entrepreneur mindset I think a lot about is a focus on customer. Often in class, we say to the students, who's the richest guy in the world? And the answer usually is Jeff Bezos. And what he is maniacal on is his focus on customer. Customer, customer, customer. And then finally be in a state of doing. You guys were brave enough to get up, take an hour of your day, learn about entrepreneurship. And if you don't do anything about it, you're going to die with it. And that's our hope for this call today, is to create action around the idea you have in your mind so that in 6 months, you can get to a go, no go, that you can start attracting others. Anyone have any comments about what I'm talking about? Does anyone want to share a reaction to that? We were hoping these breakout rooms would be a bit more interactive, and I know it's Zoom, so that sucks. So here's what we're going to offer you, if you'd like. One of the things we have at UMSL Accelerator is an entrepreneur in residence program. So what we do is we invite students, community members, alums to take you through a guided process, because here's the other dirty little secret of entrepreneurship. It's kind of like losing weight. You know, you have a goal, you have a thing you want to do, but if you don't go to a gym, if you don't work out 3 times a week, if you don't set a plan in place, it's not going to happen. Same with entrepreneurship. So what we do, and what I would offer each of you on this call, is a 6-month engagement where we meet once a month for a half an hour and say, okay, what's that 3-year big goal? So each of you have this idea, you're teasing it out, you're probably employed somewhere, you've got some experience with the industry that you're in, and you think you found a better mousetrap or a better efficiency, something better. What does that look like in 3 years? And how do you get to that? So for me, I was a banker by trade, and I said, well, from a childhood memory of sisters playing with dolls filled with water balloons, I wanted to have the top selling doll in the country. Well, that's a big idea. I didn't have any money, didn't have any network. But for each of you, think about and write down what that 3-year thing is that, man, if you get 80% close, you're thrilled. If you get anywhere near it, you're thrilled. And it's a stretch goal that you might not know how to get there. So put that, the other part of it is get it out of your head, get it in writing. So if that's the case, if that's the thing you want to tease out, you want to explore, what has to happen this year in 2021? So if we're together next January at another Legacy Council meeting, we're talking about really staying relevant, what would you be able to report that's progress? But then I always say grounded in reality, because this is hard work. Is there a 6-month reality check? Every month, every 6 months, am I having fun? Am I making progress? Is this objective? And what we're willing to do. Okay, Miss Mabel raised her hand. Miss Mabel, got a question? You're on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hi, good morning. Yes, my name is Mabel Davis. I am in the education field. And I was just wondering, are we able to ask a question about our business or potential
Absolutely.
business? I didn't know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Fire away.
Okay. So my thought process right now is, well, for one, I am I'm human rights activist. Fair trade is one thing that I have grown to actually fall in love with, and it is one way to combat human trafficking, which is one of this really is a passion for me, is to educate people about human trafficking. I'm already in the education field and I teach social studies, American history. So I am in, that field, and I have my degree from UMSL in political science. And so my thought process lately has been creating a B corporation that will eventually turn into a fair trade certified business. I do have a product and a service. It's not a lot of education around fair trade and how important it is, especially in the coffee, tea, and chocolate industry. And so my thought process is coming out with just basic products, like right now, online store, online a space rather, where people can come and learn about fair trade. I'm creating a handbook that has lots of different information about stores right here in St. Louis, and the online market is just to get that attention and get that knowledge to people. I have created a presentation. I've presented this presentation to a couple of colleges, SIUE being one of them. And so it is, some things I have been doing to educate communities about it. I just don't know if it's, yeah.
So Ms. Mabel, so the 12 steps Laura talks about, when you download that, try to write those out. Go through the steps of what problem you're solving, what's your secret sauce, your underlying magic, your secret sauce on how you address that problem is the important part. And consider following these goals this morning, like after this conversation. What is that 3-year goal? Do you want to reach 10,000 people? Do you want to have clinics or websites? What is try to define it very specifically. What's that BHAG, that big year goal? So thank you for sharing. So moving through this reality check process, because we only have a few minutes left, is what would be willing to do if you're interested in engaging UMSL and me or Laura is, we would be your accountability coach, because here's what happens. You're all on this call because you're interested in teasing out an idea, but you're all very busy. You got a job, you got a family, we got COVID. And so how do you set aside a process like losing weight, like getting physically fit? We got to close soon. So what can you do in the next 30 days? And I throw it up against time and money. So I'm going to leave you, but I'm going to offer, if you're interested in working with UMSL for 6 months to tease out this idea, we're rooting for you, and follow with me. And thanks for coming this morning.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning.
Sharon, we didn't have enough time.
I know there's never enough time. I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us this morning, especially Dan and Laura, for lending their expertise. We're very proud of these two very accomplished UMSL alums. And we'd love for you to stick around for a few minutes, like we were having coffee in a real live webinar or seminar without in different times. So if you want to stick around for some questions, Dan didn't have enough time, he can answer them. We'll also provide follow-up contact information for both Dan and Laura. There's the slide for that, so you can email them directly if you'd like. But I'm gonna kind of turn it back over to Dan and Laura to see, they might have like 10 or 15 minutes to hang around if people would like to do that.
Happy to stick around for any other questions if we didn't have enough time, or as you said, feel free to reach out and email. I'm happy to share any additional information or thoughts with regards to today. So thanks everybody for being here.
Sharon, what we are sharing in our group is what we really hope through this conversation today is to stir action. I would hate to have you just enjoy this conversation, think of it as a nice chat and move on. If you've got an idea for your company as an entrepreneur or as for yourself as an entrepreneur, please take this moment to act. An entrepreneur mindset has a bias towards action. And so Laura and I just didn't come here to kind of share. We crave action for our network. So please follow up with either of us. We're happy to coach or hold accountable or provide a direction, because that's what is interesting, is taking this, de-risking it and taking it further.
That's great, Dan. And we certainly know that you take action, and what you've created here at UMSL is something we're all really proud of, particularly the latest accelerator for the DEI. And so Dan is an example of intrapreneur and entrepreneur in action, both through his company Water Babies and what he's developed here at UMSL. So that's great advice, Dan, and you've done it so well. Just really appreciate your support and hope you think of UMSL when you have financial, legal, business-minded questions, because we've got the faculty, staff, and alums here with expertise to be able to help you. So thank you.
Thanks again.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye.